I've never seen a formula for something so subjective like beauty.
Yeah. What we did was we looked at like the golden ratio. We can measure the length of an eye, the width of an eye, and we can create a proportion to how close that measurement is to the golden ratio in the culture that we currently live. How you look, your appearance, looking fresh as opposed to looking tired and older, it's pretty important. People associated bags under the eyes with tiredness or lack of sleep or stress. But it's often genetics. So rhinoplasty is nose reshaping. So
Nose reshaping.
I mean, most people, they're looking for natural. They don't want to look like a different person. They want to look like the best version of themselves. Those patients that don't need surgery actually think about their appearance for more than 10 hours a day. And
Really?
it can be quite a challenge because every time they wake up in the morning, they're thinking about their appearance. Is someone looking at my nose? Is someone looking at my face? The answer is they're probably not.
Okay, Julian, so take me back about 18 months ago. What was some of the trigger moments for you to start your RNT journey?
So, Akash, first of all, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for inviting me to come. And in a way, health has always been something really important to me, like fitness, training. And I've had a lot of trainers over the years and gyms, personal trainers. And when I came across like your program, and I've always been interested in doing different things. So every year I've done slightly different things. And so I thought, well, this intrigues me, getting into shape, best shape of your life. And initially I thought, well, probably not for me because it's online and it's virtual. But I was intrigued because you had so many people who'd gone through the program who were really happy. They really achieved exactly what they were looking for. And so you got my attention. And so then I looked at it a bit more and I thought, well, why not try this?
And what was the reason? Was it literally just, I want to try something new? Or was there a reason to want to invest the time, energy, and of course...
I think that in a way, what I didn't really anticipate until I did your program was how important mindset is. And I'm average height, 5'9", and I was always about 72, 73 kilograms. And I thought, average height, average weight, I'm like in good shape. And then doing lots of sport, training with my children, I realized it's getting harder for me, kind of run at the same pace as them. And I thought, what else can I do to improve my fitness? And how can I improve my shape? And I looked at lots of things and I never really thought, well, actually, my mindset is not quite right here. And it was really only till I started your program did I truly appreciate the value in it. In a way, it gave me more than I thought it was going to give me. And I remember when Ed, your kind of head coach, was saying, well, Julian, I think, in terms of what you need to do, you need to have your nutrition in a way that you should be about 63 kilograms. And I didn't really believe that because in my mind, I was set 70 kilograms is about right for me. Even 69, I'll probably be underweight. That's how my mind had been. Because for so many years, I was thinking I was the ideal weight. But of course, that's not true. To get in really good shape where, you can see your toned muscles, you've got to have low body fat. And so the nutrition is so important for that.
Yeah.
But it was really a mindset thing because I thought every time I was going less than 70 kilograms, I was getting underweight. It's not true.
So you had a stigma around that 70 mark.
I think so.
Yeah.
And then of course, as I did the program and there are challenges in doing that, but as I did the program and I headed towards 63, Ed said, no, you should aim for 61. Which if he'd said from the outset, I don't think I could have seen the reality of that. But of course that's right. But it's hard to stay at that kind of weight, because that's really cutting things.
Well, there's a difference between the shape of your life and then the lifestyle solution you hold year round.
Right.
What did you find about, you mentioned the mindset, that was the missing piece. What was it about the mindset that was missing? Was it just simply acknowledging you're going to be below 70 kilos, or was there some other pieces of the puzzle here?
So I think it's in a way, I think all of us over a period of time, we have certain things that we just believe as fundamental truths. And so I have patients who come to see me, and they come to see me because they have an image inside, a self-image of how they like to look. And it might be that their image they see in the mirror is actually different to that. And so there's a kind of an imbalance between the two, your self-image and what you actually physically see. And similarly with, like, I think weight, like, we all have an idea of what we think is our ideal weight, but it might not be what's correct. And so in a way, it's a fundamental shift, because once I realized, well, actually, probably my ideal weight is more like 65 kilograms. That's now, I've reset my thermostat. So now my weight kind of stays at that. And doing that, I find, I'm fitter, healthier, can run faster, just, all these kind of physical and health attributes are just at a better level.
Where do you think that discrepancy comes from? And maybe draw on your own practice experience on that.
I think it comes from the way we think as people, because in a way, it comes down to how our mind works. Our mind, when we think, if I was asked you to think, tell me about your house, you'd immediately think, well, a picture. You'd picturize your house. And if I said, when you go in your house, what's in your living room? Well, you'd think about your living room in a picture. Like we think in pictures, like as people. We have a visual representation of things. But when it comes to the mind, no one has ever seen the mind. No one knows what the mind is. Like, it's something that we all have, we use all the time, but we don't have like a kind of visual representation of it. And there is like, there was a famous like scientist going back into the 1930s who drew out like a kind of visual representation, a model of the mind. And in that model, your mind has conscious thought, which, we're thinking about now, we're talking about things, and it has an emotional side. And although we think, we're rational people, we do things in a rational way, actually, it's the emotional side of our mind that really governs things. And it's that emotional side that is almost like a thermostat. So you, in the back of your mind, you might want to like lose weight or get fitter, but that thermostat will kind of take you back to where you think you should be. And so that's why, like, when they look at kind of like diets, something like 95% of people who lose weight when they like go on a diet, they put their weight back on, like within a period of weeks. And it's almost like that subconscious part of their mind, that thermostat, takes them back to that original setting. So it's only if you actually change the setting can you then change your weight or change your lifestyle.
Had you tried to change the setting before?
Well,
or did you not know there was another setting?
That it was, I didn't think it was, I thought it was correct.
Okay. Yeah. So you just got over. That's what you mean by you didn't expect to get the results you got.
I didn't know. I think I was surprised, because in a way I'd had like kind of, I'd had like trainers, I'd had like nutritionists in the past, but fundamentally I hadn't changed what I needed to change, which was my mindset.
Interesting. What do you think has allowed you to keep that thermostat set at 65 now? Because that's a very hard thing to do, to not revert back to 73. What's been some of the key fundamentals you've put in place in your life that's allowed you to stay in good shape year round?
Yeah, I think there's different elements to that. One is kind of just understanding things, just the knowledge, and just knowing that, what you need to do is just be mindful of nutrition, be mindful of exercise, and have a balance in your life. So, I mean, I like to go out with my friends. I like to, party and these kind of things. But it's all about balance. You want to also look after your health, also look after your nutrition at the same time. And then secondly, I think, it is about surrounding yourself with like-minded people. I like hanging out with you because I know you're really into fitness and health. And I think, having that sense of community, which you kind of built in RNT, absolutely, it fosters that kind of like healthy lifestyle.
Yeah.
The more you hang out with people of that mindset, the more your life kind of revolves around that.
Yeah, absolutely. And with your life, you've got your business, your practice, you've got your 3 kids, and then you've got yourself. And many people look at that and think, how do you get it all? How do you fit it all in and find that balance? So what were some things has worked well for you to bring in the health, the nutrition, the fitness, and the time to prioritize?
I think it definitely is a challenge trying to get everything done. And so I think I do set up priorities like in my life, and my number one priority is, my family, spending time with them. My children now are at age where they want to hang out with me, they want to do things, but I'm aware that might not be for so much longer.
So you're a cool dad at the moment.
Yeah, well, I don't know if they'd go that far, but things like exercise and sport, I will try and do it with them. So for the last few months, we've been playing a lot of tennis, and so I can play tennis with them, and so we all get good exercise. We all have fun doing it, and in a way, it's about prioritizing things. So yes, family's important. I love doing work. I love seeing my patients, my team. I love going to work. It's the surgery I do is very artistic, and so every single person that I see and help is really kind of unique what I'll help them with. And that kind of personalized care is something that I love doing. So I don't really see it as work. I love going and doing that. It is a balance, kind of fitting everything in. But I think it just requires organization.
And with your family, how have you modeled health, fitness, nutrition into the family and built it as part of the lifestyle? Because I think that's the key to making it sustainable. So it's not just the thing, oh yeah, dad's doing a diet or dad's going to go and train. I think it's the integration element that we see where people can sustain this. Whereas I think if the family aren't on board, or if the partner's not on board, it can be very difficult.
Yeah, I think...
Is it a conversation, or is it a...
I think you're absolutely right. I think in a way, my children have kind of grown up in a kind of environment where they see that, health is really important. And yes, they love eating ice cream, but they also realize, it's not actually that good for you. So it's kind of that balance between the two. And we do kind of a lot of sport together. So I've been into karate for over 10 years, and I really insisted that my daughter started it when they were at school, because they had a karate sensei as part of their primary school. And they weren't kind of super keen to do it. But I was like, come on, you should be able to defend yourselves. And this is just one step to being able to do that. And then, of course, when COVID came, all these things ground to a halt. And so, what we managed to do was just start family karate classes.
No way.
We had the sensei, because he couldn't teach at the time at any clubs because of COVID, but he was able to teach us privately. So we started having private family karate lessons. And now we've continued it. So now we all go to karate together. So it's in a way, it's a kind of they weren't super keen on doing it initially, but now they have fun because there are other children who do it, and we go to the leisure center, and we all do it as a family. And so as far as we can, we kind of integrate these kind of things into our lives.
Yeah, amazing. So for those who potentially haven't got that integration in place yet, especially around the dinner table, what are some key things that parents should be speaking about with their children to help drive that conversation? Maybe I'm asking selfishly for future advice.
Yeah.
But yeah, speak to the parents who want to bring more nutrition to the table, health, consciousness, awareness.
I think that the way that we found, my wife and I, is by example. So what we eat in terms of healthily, mixing protein, carbohydrate, vegetables. Well, if we were only eating lots of junk food, then that's really what the children are going to see, and that's what they're going to want. But we haven't stopped them from eating things. Of course they eat crisps, of course they eat sweets, but they have a balance. They realize the importance of eating good food, and then we always kind of favor that. But We don't stop them eating things as well, because that's also like, you know, counterproductive. When I was growing up, my parents were like pretty strict on certain things, so they would never let us eat in certain foods. But of course, then the moment you have opportunity to eat that food, then you just want more of it.
Yeah.
So I mean, their favorite food is actually McDonald's. They love to go to McDonald's, but we wouldn't go to McDonald's like, you know, every other week. You know, it has to be like periodically.
So it's like it's a transition, and then it's playing. It's
I think it's a bit.
knowing when to say yes and when to say no.
Yeah, it's a balance. So, you know, most of the time they're gonna have like pretty healthy food, a
Yeah.
mixture of different foods with vegetables. But then there are going to be times, you know, where, you know, they are going to have some junk food.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like,
Yeah.
I think healthy also in terms of mindset. And
Yeah, that makes sense. So you started this journey and you had the expectation of 63 kilos, then 61 kilos. And now you found sort of a healthy lifestyle solution. But talk me through the process of getting into the shape of your life.
yeah.
What was the process like of going through that journey?
Yeah. So I think initially, as yourself, Akash, and your team, you know, you have a really robust system by which, you know, people can kind of just see how to model your life in a way that you can get the results that you want. And of course, nutrition is kind of fundamental to that. And it certainly isn't easy, because when you start measuring, you know, what you eat in terms of nutrition, calories, it is absolutely mind-blowing, because there are certain things that you think, well, it's pretty healthy to eat this, but actually there can be literally, you can eat a third of your daily calories just in one snack, you know, one packet of crisps. At the same time, you know, I've been vegan now for like 3 years. I didn't realize that I'm not eating enough protein. Even though I was eating like tofu and beans, really when I add it up, you know, actually what I eat, it's actually a lot less than what I should eat. Like, it's really not a balanced diet at all. So that kind of like, it's only when you actually measure these things you really find that out. It definitely is like, it's hard in terms of the journey, because to get into the best shape of my life, certainly the nutrition is kind of key to that. And there is a point where you think, you know, how much more weight can I lose in terms of nutrition? And I have a very strong mindset, so I kept with the system and kept with the routine. But a lot of people around me, including my wife, my team at work, even some of my patients, were like, what's going on? Like, you're losing so much weight.
Yeah.
and you know, then you still just have to like kind of believe and just keep going.
Yeah, that's interesting. And what did he say?
I said, yes, I feel like I'm in the best shape of my life, but yes, I have lost, you know, I lost like over 10 kilograms. And you do see that in your face, because your face gets more kind of defined. And so it didn't bother me, because I you know, I believed in what was happening. I believed in the system, and I was happy, like, you know, going the distance.
Yeah. Why did you go vegan?
Well, I've never eaten like a lot of meat, and I have been vegetarian before, and really it's like mostly for ethical reasons.
Yeah.
You know, and in a way it's a big subject, but the farming of animals and how it's done, you know, it's not something that I feel we need to do any longer. There's enough options, like in terms of vegan food, certainly in the UK. You know, the UK, you have so many options when you go out, whether it's like the supermarket or when you're out for dinner. Certainly, like, you know, in certain parts of the world, it's more difficult. Recently, I went to Lyon with some of my friends, and we just went for lunch. Like, on the first day we arrived there, and I was looking at the menu, French menu in this bistro, and there's like nothing that doesn't have any cheese or ham and so I asked like for a salad sans fromage, you know, without cheese. And the waitress kind of rolled her eyes and gave me like a funny stare. But, you know, I think in the UK, you know, we have so many options, but it's a little bit more difficult when you travel to certain countries.
What was your trigger point to go vegan? Did you watch a documentary? Was it a self-realization?
It was more like self-realization. It was actually Valentine's Day, like just over like 3 years ago. And I just made a decision. I thought, well, you know, actually I'm eating less and less meat. Why don't I just like try this? And I mean, it was, I think, maybe a year and a half after that, I came across, your training, RNT. And then, the more I looked into it, I found out that you were vegan. And I was like, well, that's it's just meant to be.
Yeah.
But no, I think my family aren't vegan. My wife isn't vegan. So we're kind of integrated into things.
And are they now?
No.
Oh, no one in the family is. So no one in the family is vegan.
So my wife's like vegetarian.
Okay.
But the children actually eat whatever they like.
Okay, interesting. So everyone's got different habits in the house.
Yeah.
Interesting. And how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, I want them to like make up their own minds.
Yeah.
So I don't want to like say you should do this in this way. When they get older, they'll make their own decisions about things. I'm not like if there's birthday cake, I'm not gonna like say, okay, I can't have any birthday cake. I'm not gonna, I'm not like incredibly strict in that way. I'm gonna like partake in like the family occasions.
Okay, just to not be awkward.
Yeah.
That makes sense. You mentioned earlier around your work, and you said that for you it's very much an art to the work, and you're involved in facial aesthetics. How did you get involved with that, and why did that become a passion? Because you've written, I think, three like textbooks on like very specific surgeries.
That's right.
So you've obviously got a passion for it. Where did that come from?
I mean, in a way, like medicine's definitely a journey, because when you sign up for medicine, like you think, well, it's going to be 5 to 6 years, but actually it's more like 10, 15 years journey. And in a way, before going to medical school, I was really into science. I was really into art. I loved like painting, and in a way, my journey through medicine and surgery, well, I worked in different specialties, and I think you eventually find something that you really like. And when I worked in the NHS for more than 10 years, and I was like consultant at the London Teaching Hospital. And most of what I was taken up was with like management and political things. And it just didn't fit with what I was really interested in. And at that time, I took a bit of a leap of faith, and I went to the US and I did fellowships in like cosmetic plastic surgery in LA, Beverly Hills, and then in New York, Manhattan. And then as I did that, I realized, well, this is my real passion. This is a kind of surgery that is very artistic. It's very specific to like, each person. And you see your results. Like, whatever you do for anyone, there's no hiding. You can see it. And so I came back to London. I started my practice, and now this is like, over 10 years ago. And I love doing it. And it's an area of surgery that is very personal, because every patient that comes to me ultimately put their trust in me, and it is a responsibility. But over the years, I've kind of even subspecialized even more. I started doing all facial surgery, and then gradually it's kind of filtered over a period of time. So now there's really like 3 surgeries that I do every week, and that's like facial aging, like facelift and neck lift surgery, and eyelid surgery, and rhinoplasty. And those are kind of the 3 procedures that I do. And medicine has got so specialized over the last like 10 years. It's getting harder and harder to know about so many different subjects, because each field there's so many little nuances within it.
What are those 3 surgeries in layman's? Like what exactly are you doing?
Face and neck lift surgeries, it's essentially like facial aging. So with
wrinkles
over like your kind of like late 30s to 50s, everything comes southwards.
Okay.
So your jawline gets squarer, the skin gets looser, you end up with more kind of bands in the neck, which in the culture that we currently live, how you look, your appearance, looking fresh as opposed to looking tired and older, well, it's pretty important in the culture that we live. Eyelid surgery or blepharoplasty, well, that can be like also facial aging, like loose skin around the eyes, but it can also be in young people. Like some people have bags under their eyes, and although you think, well, people associated bags under the eyes with tiredness or lack of sleep or stress, but it's often genetics. And it's often like there are other family members, maybe your parents have bags. And it's difficult because the world we live in, people say, "Oh, you're tired, you're not sleeping." And of course, like, you can sleep 12 hours a night, but you can still have bags because it's not related to sleep. It's just like genetics. And then the other procedure I mentioned was rhinoplasty. So rhinoplasty is nose reshaping. So
nose reshaping.
Yeah. So, if you have a large bump on the nose or like wide nose, often people, they might have been a bit bullied about these things or feel quite self-conscious about their nose. And so rhinoplasty is a procedure that can make, really quite a difference to people.
Wow. And why do people come to you? And what do they say?
Well,
when they call you up or visit?
Most people come to see me because there's a specific thing that they kind of noticed. Either like they've got looking more tired, they've got more facial aging, or they've got a particular part of their face that they just haven't liked for many years. I mean, most people, they're looking for natural. They don't want to look like a different person. They want to look like the best version of themselves. So, I mean, we've all seen kind of people like celebrities who look like they've had way too much work, big lips and the whole face looks like it's all stretched. Well, good treatment, good surgery, that's not the case. Good treatment is much more discreet. It's difficult to tell that something's improved. And, they're A-list celebrities who have flatly denied, I would never have surgery. I know for fact you had surgery, but it's done in a way that is discreet. You have to look really, really carefully to be able to really see that.
So there's a lot of taboo around facial aesthetics, and you always say, "Oh, they're getting their face done, or they're getting their nose done." It's said in a derogatory way.
Yeah.
People don't really openly talk about it. Why do you think that is, and what are your thoughts on? I mean, obviously you do this for a profession, right? What are your thoughts on how it can help people?
Yeah.
And what are some of the deeper reasons why people come to you?
So I guess definitely many people don't want other people to know, whether they're friends or family. That's absolutely true. It's certainly an area that has changed a lot. Even in the last 3-4 years, people are much more open than they used to be. And I think social media, changing our culture has definitely been an influence over that. I think that most people often when it comes to facial aging, often when you look more youthful or you've been quite attractive in the past, people treat you in a certain way. And as you look more tired, people treat you slightly differently. They might not give you the same time that they used to. And certainly for relationships, self-confidence, self-image, some professions, it can make a significant difference. But often what patients will say to me is, I look in the mirror and I don't really see myself anymore. And because going back to what we were talking about before, we all have a self-image of how we look. And when you look in the mirror and you've got more aging because you've got loose skin, you've got puffiness and bands in your neck, well, you've gone further away from that kind of self-image. And then if you have a cosmetic procedure, surgery, facelift surgery, eyelid surgery that takes you back to where you used to be, closer to that self-image, that gives you a lot of confidence. And in a way, it's more than just your appearance, because that self-image is kind of who we are as a person. The ability, to do things in your life comes from kind of that inner self-belief, that inner peace. I mean, there are some patients who they might have hated something for more than 10 years. And it can be almost liberating having a surgery that corrects that. And sometimes this has been hard for me to reconcile because, I looked at, there might be a patient of mine that I did what I would describe as quite a minor procedure. I modified one aspect of their face by just 2-3 millimeters, a really fine adjustment. And that patient has come back to me and like written a 3-page thank you letter saying how grateful they are and what a massive difference I've made to their life. And in a way, it's difficult to reconcile because it's such a kind of modest change. But I take it to be that they've got so close to their self-image that they feel like that inner confidence has come to them.
So there's a sense where people may feel self-conscious about something on their face, for example, a bump in their nose.
Yeah.
And now, whereas before they're always thinking about that in the social scenarios, they're not thinking about that. Is it that element that
Absolutely.
really helps people?
So maybe like a young person, a young woman who literally has hated her nose since she was like a teenager, and then like she's got to like her 20s and thought, well, okay, I've got to a point now that I just want to do something about it. And often people have thought about it for a long time before they've decided to do something. I would say at least 10 years. It's very rare that someone just comes to me and they're like, I've just been thinking about this for a year. I just want to do it. And that's so rare. If someone said that, I would be like, I think you need to think about it more. But with this kind of like patient who's come to see me with like a large bump on their nose, it can be almost life-changing. Because, like, to give you an example, I had one young woman come to see me just around the time of COVID, and she disliked her nose from as long as she could remember, and she hadn't told a single person. She hadn't told her family, she hadn't told her friends, because she didn't want anyone to try and talk her out of doing it, because it was like important to her. And she had a large bump on the bridge of her nose, and so shaved that down to make it just more feminine, more natural. And afterwards, it just looked in balance, in harmony with the rest of her face. And even though you think everyone's going to know, no one could tell. Even her own parents. Her father thought something had changed, but he couldn't put his finger on exactly what, because in a way she just looked like her, but just a more refined version. There's very few of us have like kind of photographic memories. Like most of us just look at people's eyes and scan the rest of your face, so we don't really remember the finer detail.
Except for you. I feel like you're taking an image of my face.
Well, that's just a bad habit.
Yeah. Do you ever turn people away?
So we do turn people away, and in a way, it's often like slightly challenging conversations. And I don't like to disappoint anyone, but I'll only try and help someone that I truly believe I can help. And the first kind of stepping stone for that is safety. And if there's any kind of question of whether to do something, whether it's safe, I'd rather not do it. To give you an example, I had like a gentleman come see me only like in the last couple of weeks, and he was really keen to have face and neck lift surgery. And yeah, he did have, he was a gentleman in his 60s, he did have kind of a lot of loose skin, and he did look a little tired. But he was on a medicine to thin his blood. And this medicine, it had been tried to be stopped before, and he had a clot in his leg. And it had been stopped a second time, and he got another clot. And, someone with those kind of medical issues, life is just too short. It just wouldn't be safe to do something just to improve kind of his facial appearance. Because if something was to happen, it would just, something that I could like be comfortable with. And then the other group of patients are patients that, well, sometimes patients just don't need further surgery. And sometimes I have patients come and see me, and they might have had 3 or more kind of previous like kind of plastic surgery procedures, and they're looking for another procedure. And I would always listen to that person and give them the time and to understand exactly what they're looking for. But sometimes a patient's come to see me and they look pretty good, and and then it's a question of like working out, well, why is this person looking for something? And to give you an example, I had like a lady come and see me, and she was like, a nice English lady in her like 50s, and she was looking to have like a further procedure on her nose, and she'd had like 3 previous rhinoplasties, and she'd had some filler in her nose, and she just wanted her nose lifted a little bit and just minor refinement. And I asked her, why are you really looking to do this? And she's like, well, I just want this tip lift a little bit and refine a little bit here. And I was like, well, your nose is, it's pretty good. Like, do you really want to go through another surgery? And it's going to be quite challenging surgery because you've had previous surgery. And I asked her several times. And then the final time, there was this kind of like uncomfortable silence for what seemed like minutes. And then she said, Dr. Silva, like, no one's actually asked me in that way before. And actually, when I was like a teenager, my father hit me. And my nose has never been the same since. And in that instant, we kind of answered, like, what was kind of really going on. And her nose looked pretty good. Like, it looked natural. You wouldn't be able to tell anything about it. But us as people, the way our mind works is that you can have a kind of level of trauma that you associate with something, and then it's kind of there until something has gone, unless you go to that root cause, to really go to look for the actual cause. But many patients, you don't get to that level. Many patients, it's difficult to uncover that kind of underlying kind of cause. I mean, on the back of kind of like, over 10 years of doing this, I have spent more and more time thinking about those kind of groups of patients, the patients that actually they don't need surgery, which is ironic because, I'm like cosmetic and plastic surgeon, but ultimately, how do we help those patients that don't need surgery? And so I've actually been working on a program to kind of help people get to their self-image, uncover, why they're looking to improve something, and really to help those people that sometimes those patients that don't need surgery actually think about their appearance for more than 10 hours a day. And
really?
It can be quite a challenge because it's always, every time they wake up in the morning, they're thinking about their appearance. Is someone looking at my nose? Is someone looking at my face? And the answer is they're probably not, but because of the way the mind has kind of focused on that area for so long, over so many periods, it's become more and more involved. And so I've been working on a program to really help those patients to try and change their quality of life. So just like,
I mean, that's something that is not just facial based, but even just body based, right?
Yeah.
Even what we do, when people can get into really good shape, but they're still, like you said, the things that they used to look like or they used to think of is still there in their mind, and they're still thinking of.
Well, I'm interested, Akash, like in terms of body image, how does that come out in terms of like body dysmorphia, like in the clients that you treat?
Yeah, I think everyone has probably got some level of body dysmorphia. If you think like body dysmorphia as in its sort of 100% is, you're always thinking about your body. But for anyone who's into their fitness and health, they naturally are going to be thinking about their bodies. They might catch themselves in the mirror, catch themselves in the car reflections. Maybe I'm speaking from personal experience here, but I think there's always a level of consciousness around your body, and how much that dimmer is on and off will depend on how progressive you are in the journey and how much you've sort of resolved or processed some of those earlier experiences in your life where it tends to come from. You may have looked bad in a dress one day and someone commented on it, or for me it was always, I grew up with moobs and a pot belly, so for me I've always been self-conscious around my chest, and I think I naturally have a bit of gyno in my chest, no matter how lean I get. Even when I'm absolutely shredded on a bodybuilding stage, as soon as I put a pound on, I get a little bit of gyno, and it still makes me feel a little bit self-conscious. Right. I'll think about it in certain scenarios. I might not wear certain things because of that, and it's nothing to do necessarily with the fact I'm obese. It's just I have a propensity to store fat tissue around my chest.
Yeah.
So I do think about that, and it's interesting actually. And I've not really said this, but when you said to me, people think about these things for over 10 years. A friend of mine said it to me a year ago. He said he's had some gyno work done. I said, and he's in the aesthetic space actually in New York. And he was telling me about he did gyno. I was like, oh, why'd you do that? He said, I've never been able to. He's like, you've always been. He's actually a client as well. He's like, you've been telling me to bulk for about 4 or 5 years, but I've never done it. I said, why is that? He's like, because every time I gain a bit of body fat, it always makes my chest look bad. It makes my moobs appear in a weird way.
Right.
You know, even though I'm not fat, they appear in a weird way. And I just needed to get over this hurdle. And I've been thinking about it for years and years and years. So I got gyno done recently. I said, no way. So he showed me his before and after.
Yeah.
And normally his fat deposits mean his chest like points out to the side slightly, which is kind of like what mine does.
Right.
And now it looks normal.
Right.
And I looked at it and I thought, that's incredible. Then he was showing me all these like gyno before and after pictures. And it's not like, you know, you think of gyno, you think these extreme circumstances of like, is really bad. But these are just the subtle ones that you're mentioning that you probably never even noticed it, but I've always noticed it. And I remember as a kid, when I was in swimming classes, or, you know, like I went to an all boys school. So it's like, you know, in the gym classes, and people used to like take the piss out of the fact that I had like little moves, and I was a skinny guy as well, so skinny fat. Yeah. And when I heard that, I thought to myself, I said, how much was it? And he was telling me the prices of it. He was like, it's like 20, 30 grand. He's like, I did it here. And I thought to myself, for a few days, I was thinking about it a lot. I was thinking, maybe one day it's something I'll consider. Yeah. And then I was like, why am I considering it? And I was like, it's because of exactly what you just said, all the things you mentioned. And I was like, there's always a level of insecurity I have around that part of my body. Yeah. That unless I'm unsustainably lean, it's always going to be there a little bit. And he was saying something like, this is something interesting, because when you wear a t-shirt and you have a little bit of that, or you wear a shirt, the t-shirt sort of, or the jumper holds, you know, it stays up a little bit rather than falling down on your chest. And it's these small things that if you have it, you'll think about all the time. You think everyone's looking at it, but no one's looking at it, right? Only you're thinking everyone's looking at it. Yeah. So the question of body dysmorphia is, I think I've always had an element of it. And I think nowadays I don't think much about my body in the day. Yeah. But there is always a little bit of an element. Yeah. Especially because I'm in fitness. Yes. So there's a certain look I feel like I have to keep up. Yeah. Outside of the fact I enjoy looking good, but I think there's always that extra element. Yeah. But that's not to say over the years it's been high. Yeah. And I think many other people experience it, but it's just the conversation that potentially people don't want to admit to, because it can sound quite extreme, even though it's potentially not.
Yeah, Akash, you know, like, because we kind of give these labels to things like body dysmorphia. But in a way, there aren't kind of absolute definitions of these things. And there is like a questionnaire that I started like using like for my patients, which was really to kind of identify, are there some patients who, you know, potentially have, you know, like body dysmorphia, and can we identify them, you know, before having surgery? And there's like a questionnaire that's been validated through science. And so optimistically, we started using this questionnaire, and essentially this questionnaire will give you a score out of 40. And if you score above 28,
I think I've seen
it's going to be like diagnostic. But of course, when you start using this, you find people have scores all over the place. You know, there's some people who've got a score like 1 or 2. And then there are a few patients who have a score like 37, 38, you know, really high. And sometimes you think, well, have they got body dysmorphia? But actually, when you take that person as a whole, they're a hairdresser, you know, they work along mirrors on every surface, and their profession is like looking at people's faces, looking at people's hair, and it's very kind of aesthetics. And they haven't got body dysmorphia, but they scored very highly on this kind of questionnaire. And there isn't any kind of test that is 99 or 100% specific, because it's a spectrum. And there are many people who, you know, maybe a little bit self-conscious, but they're not in a harmful way. But it's only that small minority where it can completely affect everything they do in their life.
100%.
And, you know, very occasionally I have someone who comes and sees me who, you know, they might only have, like, say, a small bump on their nose, but they never go out. They feel so self-conscious they won't see any of their friends. And it's got to a point where it's really affecting their kind of quality of life. And then that is definitely more in the more harmful area, dysmorphia, and definitely like surgery is not going to help that person because they need to have more help in a more kind of supportive and psychological way to change their kind of quality of life. But often it's not black and white, often it's kind of shades of gray. And of course, as a doctor, as a surgeon, I really want to help people who are going to make a good benefit to. And sometimes that isn't going to be surgery, but trying to identify people can be a little challenging because it's not black and white.
Well, the hairdresser example is a great one because I remember interviewing a few bodybuilders a couple of years ago, and despite their incredible physiques, they said their body dysmorphia was super high because when they were competing, they were just surrounded by people who had better physiques and just looked incredible all the time. So they said the more they competed, the worse it got, the worse their body dysmorphia, because they were always comparing their photos, they were looking at their body parts. And when you're a bodybuilder, you're only seeing what you lack and what you need to improve. So you suddenly start attaching a dysmorphia element to that. And I think that's very common in the aesthetics because even like in personal training, when you're on the gym floor, when I was there for many years, you're taught your body is your business card. So, you may see other trainers on the gym floor, and if they're, bigger than you,
yes,
you may be feeling inferior. And for many years, I was in a gym where there were a lot of big guys who were trainers. So to make myself look bigger, I used to wear 2 t-shirts. I used to wear a t-shirt underneath my like PT top,
right,
to add a little bit of, like, would it make any difference? Probably not. Yeah. But did it make me feel better? Yeah, it did. Yeah. Because I was in that aesthetic environment. So it's interesting you mentioned that because I've definitely experienced it.
Yeah. I think now, certainly over the last 5 years with social media, we've been almost bombarded by amazing photographs. And that might be people's bodies and physiques, certainly in terms of people's faces and appearances. There's so many people who look almost perfect, like in terms of digital photographs, their social media, their Instagram. But of course, it's stretched from what reality is. And because a lot of those photographs, they're not 100% authentic. They've been tweaked and modified and altered. And I've had numerous Instagram kind of like stars who look wonderful on like their photographs. And then when they come and see me, you wouldn't recognize them from their kind of photos because they in their kind of untweaked state, they look different. There are flaws in the skin. There are flaws in their kind of facial balance and harmony. But of course, to many people looking at kind of these kind of social media, particularly younger people, their kind of values are being kind of filtered by that. They're seeing these kind of perfect images which don't exist in reality. Until recently, I think it was like 2021, there was no kind of legal limit on who could have like facial kind of aesthetics. And by that, I mean kind of non-surgical treatments like Botox and fillers. And there was one article that I read that like in 2021, in England, we brought out legislation that said that anyone under the age of 18 could not have non-surgical treatments. And that is the law. But they estimated in the year preceding to that, something like 70,000 people, like ultimately children, had non-surgical treatments like Botox and fillers, which is quite hard to really kind of fathom because in terms of ethics, medical ethics, certainly as a doctor, ethics is so important, and you have to question, did those kind of people really need all those treatments like Botox to stop lines with movement? Is really more facial aging. It's not something that young people need. And fillers, well, is it really going to be a good idea to give fillers to people under the age of 18? I think it's like certainly controversial area. But a lot of that has come from kind of social media and the kind of like the way and access these kind of images can come about.
So it's increased demand for people like yourself.
Absolutely. I've never treated any like people under the age of 18, but I think the fact that potentially 70,000 people have just in 1 year is just staggering.
You talk a lot about you said like make slight adjustments here to help align the face. you sent me an article you had published in the Daily Mail. I think it was in January, and I read it, and inside of it, you talked about a formula you created on like these small refinements of what the perfect face is. I've never seen a formula for something so subjective like beauty.
Yes.
Talk us through that experience why you did that and what it is.
It comes from the understanding. I mean, we all know like a beautiful face when we see it. We can all recognize elegance, but it's something that is so hard to truly measure. Like going back to the times of Leonardo da Vinci, they would look at like symmetry and proportions, but even that is difficult. How do you measure like symmetry, like in terms of the scale? So what we did was we looked at like the golden ratio, and the golden ratio is a ratio that has been used in paintings, in architecture since the period of the Greeks, and a lot during the Renaissance period. So when you study like say the Mona Lisa, some of the greatest pieces of art that were done by Leonardo da Vinci, you can draw out lines that will show proportions to the golden ratio. And so we thought, well, can we use this in terms of analyzing a human face? And so there are certain things that we can measure. We can measure the length of an eye, the width of an eye, the length of a nose, and taking the eyes, the nose, the mouth, the cheeks, we can take these characteristics and we can create a proportion to how close that measurement is to the golden ratio, and that will give us an objective number.
Wow.
And so if you have kind of 99% correlation to the golden ratio, that will be kind of a standard of beauty. And so we did that for a bunch of like actors and actresses, analyzing their faces, and it got like interesting coverage from like kind of the media. Of course, it was a little controversial.
I can imagine.
Because beauty, as we have it, it is open to interpretation. And what one person may regard as a very beautiful person, another person may disagree with. And in terms of men, well, Robin Patterson came out as our kind of number one person.
Oh, really?
And there are many people who are fans of his who would 100% agree with that, but there are many people who would disagree with that. But it is science and it is like an experiment, and so it's not 100%.
Yeah, interesting. What was from the backlash?
Well, the backlash was like, well, people disagreed with the findings, like, this is not the most beautiful, most handsome man.
Okay,
and although we try to be encompass a good amount of different people and different ethnicities, people also were like, hold on, this person's not being included, that person's not being included. But we couldn't do the study on absolutely everyone.
Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming you just picked a sample of actors and actresses and
exactly
sorted them, so to speak.
Yeah.
Have you personally done had any facial work?
I have. I mean, I do believe in doing, what is needed to, like, if you have a challenge with anything. So I have.
Are you open in sharing what you have?
I'm happy to talk about it. In a way, like I guess like.
And by the way, I think as a doctor who does this, it's the same as me getting in shape, right? You've got to walk the walk somehow, right?
So I think going back, a couple of years ago, my hair was thinning quite significantly. And I guess it didn't really bother me, but my wife was telling me about it. My manager in my office was telling me about it. And so I thought, well, I should do something about it. And so I initially had some PRP treatments, and that didn't make so much difference. So then I had like transplant, and that worked pretty well. So that's like over a year ago now.
Yeah.
So I think, in my area of medicine, I would do things that I feel are supportive of what I do. I think if I didn't, it'd be a bit hypocritical. If something bothered me and I didn't do anything about it, it wouldn't be the same standard.
Yeah. So was it the hair was the main thing you've done?
So the hair, my hair was thinning, like at the back.
Yeah.
And so I got that like treated, and it worked pretty well.
Yeah. I mean, it looks naturally done. Like it don't. Yeah. I wouldn't think. I wouldn't look at it and think, oh yeah, he's had something done on it.
Well, that's the best like result is when things look natural and you can't tell.
Yeah, to be honest, since you mentioned like how to make it natural, I've been looking at you thinking, is there anything like what's he got done? And I'm probably gonna be thinking about that with a lot of people. Let's circle it back now to how we sort of started this episode. How's the physical transformation been a vehicle for your life over the past sort of 18 months?
So I think for me, like being healthy, being fit, being in good shape is important because that enables me to do everything I can to the max. It means I can spend good quality time with my family, play sport with them, but it also means that I can give 100% to my work as well. I'm full of energy. I start my day like soon after like 4:30 in the morning, and I'm in the office. I always start like with some meditation before I start seeing my patients, and being in good shape, being healthy, being fit is kind of key to that.
Amazing. What's next on the cards for Dr. De Silva?
What's next on the cards? So, I'm happy with everything in my life. I'm grateful for spending time with you, Akash. I'm grateful to my family, my friends, my patients, and I want to, in a way, live my life to the maximum and add value to all the people I can.
Amazing. Have you got a single piece of advice you'd give to someone at the start of their journey right now?
I would say that like every journey has certain challenges, and you need to have people who know and understand what they're doing and have faith in the advice that they give you. And something that I really have come to truly realize over the last 2 years is, rather than trying to do things from first principles, trying to learn things, if you find someone who really specializes or who's achieved something or built something, you can learn a lot from them if you'd like to do that as well. And in terms of like fitness and training, Akash, I think what you've built over a period of years, I don't think there's anything equivalent to it. And you can help people with a mindset. You can help people with changing their nutrition. You can help support them in an environment that will foster that kind of growth. And I think that is like unique. And that's part of the reason why I'm here supporting on this podcast.
Amazing. Well, thanks so much for being open and honest in this conversation, being on this podcast. Where can people find out more about your work? Because I know you have a lot of amazing content out there as well.
So I think probably my website is a good place, like where I have a lot of information and photographs and videos, and I have a lot of information about just insight into having a procedure or what might be needed. And so my YouTube channel or my website would be a good place.
Amazing. There's tons of education there. I've ended up down a lot of rabbit holes this week. So definitely check it out. Thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Akash, it's an absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me.